What's happening, everybody? Trey here, joined by my dad, Sean, and today, reactions to the classics. It is time to get our Def Leppard on, a band near and dear to your heart, Dad.
For sure, man.
And we're going to be taking a full album reaction to their record, Hysteria. I want to shout out our longtime patron and friend of the channel, Evan David, for suggesting this for us today. And as always, Evan David did a bunch of great write-ups, not only of each track, but of the group itself. So I'm excited to dive into this. Dad, I know you're really familiar with the record.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why Evan David picked it. My birthday was this month. I turned 50, so he picked this because I'd mentioned when I was growing up, this came out whenever I was a junior in high school, man, and I listened to this album on repeat, man. I knew this album, so it was my favorite album in high school. I haven't listened to it really honestly in probably 30 years, just one of those things. But yeah, man, huge fan of it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start with the research. Like Trey said, Evan David brings just fantastic research. So you're gonna learn about Def Leppard if you didn't know about him, and if you did know about him, maybe you didn't know this about him.
Yeah, exactly.
So, as Evan David starts, rock and roll legend has it that the band that would become Def Leppard was first formed in Sheffield, Yorkshire, England in 1977 with several lineup changes slowly taking place, which would ultimately see original band members Rick Savage, bass and backing, Joe Elliott, of course, lead vocals, the latter of whom had initially come up with the name Def Leppard, D-E-A-F, and then Leopard like the animal, while designing posters and art class, with the spelling eventually being changed to its now iconic form to make it even sound less like a punk band. They were joined by Rick Allen, drums and backing vocals, and Phil Collen on guitar and backing vocals. Meanwhile, over the next 10 years prior to the release of their fourth album, magnum opus Hysteria in 1987, the band had initially released their first and second albums, On Through the Night in 1980, High and Dry in 1981, to only moderate success. It was their third album, Pyromania, from 1983, which would prove to be the major label breakthrough for Def Leppard, reaching a lofty number 2 in the U.S. and indeed kept from number 1 only by Michael Jackson's Thriller. Have a review of that up on the channel. Spawning 2 hit singles, Photograph and Rock of Ages, both of which would top the U.S. rock charts and ultimately selling over 10 million copies in the U.S. So that was my first introduction to Def Leppard. I actually put a very brief review, it's about 7 minutes long, of Pyromania up on the channel probably a year and a half ago. So go check that out when you're done with this, of course.
No, and so they began to record their fourth record in 1984. Therefore, they themselves recognized the fact they faced a highly daunting task, to say the least. For, as Joe Elliott himself would say in 86, we were also very paranoid, something I never thought we'd suffer from, the follow-up album blues. How do you follow 6 million albums sold? And I realize now that you can't think about it, but it's too late now. Many years later, however, and with the benefit of hindsight, Elliott would also note, quote, look at the stories behind classic albums like Sgt. Pepper's or Dark Side of the Moon or the things Fleetwood Mac went through to make rumors. Every great record has a story to tell, and none of them are simple. If it was easy, everybody could do it. Certainly the recording of Hysteria, much of which took place either in Dublin, Ireland, or in North Holland due to tax purposes, would be something of a troubled production, to say the very least, involving long drawn-out processes of twists and turns, which began when the key behind-the-scenes figure of famed South African producer Robert Mutt Lang, who's popped up numerous times on this channel, who had not only already produced their previous 2 records, but had also produced several hit albums for AC/DC and Foreigner as well by this point, and would also work with the likes of Bryan Adams, Shania Twain, who of course would be Lang's wife down the road. He initially chose to drop out following the seemingly fruitful pre-production sessions for the record, citing exhaustion.
Initially, Lang would be replaced as producer by, I just laugh at Trey because you hate this album, Jim Steinman, a Bat Out of Hell fame. I don't know what this album would sound like if that held up, but what on paper seemed to be an exciting hard rock combination. Speak for yourself, Evan David. Ultimately just couldn't gel in practice, with the band regarding Steinman's approach to recording as being far too sloppy and tolerant of mistakes compared to the much more firm-handed, even perfectionist approach they had gotten used to under Lang. Ultimately, Steinman was dismissed as producer in November of '84 to be temporarily replaced by Lang's former assistant engineer Nigel Green, before Lang himself resumed full-time production duties in the summer of '85. This in turn would lead to both producer and band becoming increasingly ambitious as to just what they could achieve with this album. For as Joe Elliott again put it, Mutt said from the beginning, why can't a rock band have 7 hit singles? So he's referencing Thriller and the 7 hit singles of that. Steve Clark thought Mutt was out of his mind purely because of our background. We're from Sheffield, the Pittsburgh of England. No offense, Pittsburgh. Things like that don't happen to people like us, but we had the ability to come up with brilliant melodies. What we needed was somebody to help us sort through stuff. Up our performances higher than anyone else's. Try what you take the next paragraph. But one of the things about Def Leppard they're famous for is they're open to that studio instruction and criticism. I would say 95% of artists, especially those that had sold 10 million albums,
that had that success
would
already.
not be. Yeah.
No, man, that's a great point there. Thus, Lang's return helped to galvanize a band which had not only been stymied by their lack of progress thus far under Steinman, but which by then had also been dealt an even more severe blow as a result of a horrific car accident suffered by drummer Rick Allen on the 31st of December in 1984 when his Corvette Stingray had flipped off a country road outside Sheffield and through a dry stone wall after swerving too hard on a sharp bend, with the result that Allen faced the loss of his left arm, a devastating event which under other circumstances could have been literally as well as metaphorically crippling for both Allen himself and for his role as Def Leppard's drummer, as well as for the entire band itself by extension. In what emerged as perhaps one of the most heartwarming stories of personal determination and persistence, as well as interband loyalty in rock and roll history, however, not only did the band flatly refuse to replace Allen as drummer, but Allen himself was able to resume his drumming duties with truly astonishing speed, having first worked out that he could often operate at least part of his drum kit almost as effectively as before by utilizing his legs in place of his arms, and subsequently designing his own custom electronic drum kit, which would in turn enable him to increasingly recover his former drumming prowess on a broader level.
Yeah, after several months of practice on his new kit, Allen was able to demonstrate his progress in a highly emotional moment when he used it to play the drum intro of Led Zeppelin's When the Levee Breaks to his fellow band members, with his comeback as a full-fledged band member then being sealed by an even more emotionally charged live performance when they played the notorious Monsters of Rock Festival in Donington, England on the 16th of August in '86 to widespread acclaim. So what is that, Trey? About a year and 8 months later after the accident, with Allen himself being given an ovation when he was introduced to the crowd by Elliott, who would later recall that the whole experience had made us more human. Our brother was in crisis and the record wasn't that important anymore. We're not done yet, but I want to point out, it's funny you mentioned Zepp because it made me think of Zepp. You know, when Bonham passes, they're like, we're done. You know, and these guys, you know, Def Leppard could have been much bigger guys, but they took a 5-year break here and then they ended up taking another long break before the next one. If they would have just manufactured albums year after year, they would have been a lot richer, let me put it that way.
No, man, I respect that too, you know, just... Not looking for the money or the fame.
Exactly,
in that case.
It's our brother, man. We're going to wait on him.
Despite all the hard-earned triumph, however, it was nonetheless still the case that Allen's accident and recovery, plus further setbacks, occurred both when Lang suffered his own, thankfully far less serious car accident, as well as when Joe Elliott suffered a bout of mumps, of all things, in 1986, would, alongside the band's reaffirmed perfectionist approach under Lang, which had led the band to junk the backing tracks that had already been made under Steinman and start afresh, and so throw everything out.
2 years later, man, they just start new.
That necessarily contributed to a process of seemingly endless delays, which would plague the band still further. As a frustrated Elliott had lamented back in '86, after all, the problem wasn't necessarily with the recording. The thing that's taken so long is thinking about it. We spent so much time sitting around saying to each other, what is this album lacking? And we'd always talk in song titles. Somebody might say it's lacking a Satisfaction, a Free Bird, or a Stairway. Then we'd try and come up with a song that would measure up to that. On the other hand, all these delays would also help give the band time to refine the songs that they had come up with to the nth degree. All this perfectionism would lead to Lang taking a further 3 months to remix the tracks following the final official recording session in January of '87, with the end result being that the managing director of Def Leppard's UK label, Phonogram Records, claimed at the time that Hysteria was the most expensive record ever made in the UK at the time, with Phil Collins himself also claiming that he had heard that the album would have to sell a minimum of 4 to 5 million copies to even break even.
Yeah, when you were saying all that, and I read this a while ago. He sent this to me almost a month ago from the time I found it, so I forgot. As you were saying all that, I was thinking how expensive it is, because we both know from doing all these album reactions reviews all the time that studio time is a fortune. So that both Lang and Def Leppard as a whole had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams became swiftly apparent once the album finally came out on the 3rd of August 1987, a day before my birthday. However, at which point it topped both the US and UK album charts on its first week of release, staying in the US top 40 album chart for no less than 96 consecutive weeks, a record matched only by Bruce Springsteen's born in the USA throughout the entirety of the 80s, and in the UK top 40 for even longer at 105 consecutive weeks. Back when it was really hard to stick in those, spanning several transatlantic hit singles in the process. As Lang had earlier prophesied, as Phil Collins had once again put it, with Hysteria, the point was not just to play to the rock audience, but to play to everybody. And with a staggering over 20 million copies, possibly even over 30 million by now, the band had definitely gone a very long way indeed to achieving this goal. For as Joe Elliott would later put it in an interview in '08, by the time we did Hysteria, everything had fallen into place. Airplay and hit singles were one aspect of it, but there was also all the hard work we put into the album. We literally did slave over it to get every sound on it right. There was also Rick's accident, of course, and to be honest, I'm sure there was the initial wave of sympathy, but I'm equally sure the album would have still worked anyway. None of the other stuff, the touring, the promotion, the videos, none of that would have meant anything if the songs hadn't been there, and I'm still really proud of all the songs on Hysteria.
Sadly, Steve Clark, the guitarist, would not live to see much of the hard-earned success as he died of alcoholism in '91. But after eventually replacing him with Vivian Campbell on guitar, Def Leppard are still going strong, having been elected into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a couple years back in 2019, and with Hysteria still forming the core of their live show to this day. Evan David notes, from a personal point of view, meanwhile, I have always really, really loved this album. And while it only made number 464 in Rolling Stone's Top 500 album poll, it is in fact made number 11 in my own personal list when contributing to the RTTC Top 50 albums poll that we did earlier this year.
Look for that video after this.
And unsurprisingly, perhaps, I still firmly stand by my own verdict. Granted, at least part of this lofty regard is which I hold Def Leppard's Hysteria may admittedly be nostalgia-driven.
I'm sure I'm there.
As I'm pretty sure that it was, in fact, the first studio album proper that I ever heard from any band, full stop, back in the day. I don't remember exactly when I first heard it, but it was definitely a few years prior to my discovering the Beatles in the early 90s, as I borrowed a cassette tape of Hysteria from one of my aunties, and for some reason never gave it back. Hey man, that good music, you just...
Well, now she knows where it is, right?
Regardless, Hysteria as such has still a huge formative influence on my musical taste ever since. As far as I'm concerned, it not only remains one of the most consistent albums that I've heard with no duff tracks on it whatsoever, but also still remains one of the most exciting albums that I've ever heard, and I still get a huge electrifying thrill of adrenaline whenever I pop my aunt's old cassette into my personal stereo, press play, and start air rocking away.
Yeah, and I would say that's it for me too. You know, Trey, I was a decent basketball player back in the day, and this was my soundtrack to. I bet I've literally shot 100,000 shots to this soundtrack. So that's what I used it for. So after all of that, guys, as always, if you're new, you don't know it's as always, but the music will not be in here, but it'll be a link below. You can follow along with us if you want. It's a big dog album. It's 12 tracks, 62 minutes long. We're going to start off, Trey, with Women. It was the first U.S. single, and it went to only number 80 because it's a slow roll, right? This opening track, this is all Evan David stuff. I researched it, but this is all Evan David stuff, man. His stuff was great. This opening track introduces all the musical trademarks that will be heard on the rest of the album. Propulsive drum sounds, swirling guitar solos, and haunting vocal harmonies, and combines them into a truly rocking hymn of praise to the delightful, desirable enigma that the female half of the species represents. I mean, those are Evan David's words. You may like that, you may not, but that's his word. To many of the male half who truly can't live without them, in quotes, if possible.
And we are going to be watching the video to this, as with a few of the other tracks. I think we got 5 videos of the 12 on cue, man. So we'll get that queued up. And thanks again, Evan David.
Thank you.
Let's dive into it. All right, man. Starting the record off with Women. And you noted you weren't familiar with that music video, man.
I was not. But you know what the music video tells you is this, Trey. We spent a ton of money on this album. We are not spending a ton of money on your videos. I mean, it was fine, the video itself, but that's kind of how they did it back in the day with the hair bands, if you want to lump them in with them, of just performance videos. And, you know, and I think it's an interesting choice for the first single. It's not one of the best songs on here by any means. It's a good song, but, you know, only went to 80, like I said, in the U.S. They're lucky they were holding an all-time iconic song in their back pocket that was able to put this album over. But, you know, not much to the lyrics.
No,
but,
man.
Well,
Yeah.
what did you think?
It's pretty, you know, straightforward in that.
Yeah.
I enjoy, you know, just right away you feel that 80s type of sound. Definitely, you know, I only know a couple tracks off this record, but yeah, when I think Def Leppard, I think that kind of stadium rock,
right.
You know, anthemic choruses, and that's what this had. I thought it was pretty unique too, in the sense, kind of interplaying them in just that empty bare warehouse with the kind of comic book and blending that together and how that story progressed towards the end. Had a couple different guitar solos up in there, which are always fun. And even a little mini drum solo at the end there.
And you could tell that it was. You can already tell it's produced and arranged to the utmost perfection.
Yeah,
you can hear it. Like there's not anything off in this thing.
No, so I think that's going to be a good kind of taste for what the rest of the sound of this record is going to be as we now go to Rocket, the 7th and final U.S. single. It was the 6th in the U.K. where it reached number 15. U.S. reached number 12. So for being that deep into your single, that's impressive, man. Guitarist Phil Collins' favorite Def Leppard song to perform live to boot. It is truly groovy showcasing of the fascinating sonic possibilities represented by the band's new electronic drums, which we also saw in the Women video,
exactly.
Which was kind of cool, with its compulsive rhythms being inspired and sampled recordings of drummers from the African nation of Burundi,
Burundi. Never heard of it.
And of the abiding influence of the 70s rock stars such as Lou Reed, David Bowie, Queen, T-Rex, and Martha Hoople, who inspired Def Leppard during their use. So we're gonna be looking at the official video again of this one.
We'll see if I've seen this one. Well, there you go, Rocket. And that video really did win some. We're still performing. You mentioned at the start, it looks like the same warehouse. We just re-outfitted, but having the throwouts every time the name was thrown out, having them come up on the TV screen. Very well done video.
I thought the creativity was definitely felt there yet again, man. Musically built around that chorus yet again, quite catchy.
Yes.
I mean, Rocket, just the way it's delivered, you can't help but want to sing along.
And they're smart on the choruses that they dial back the instrumentation so it becomes more anthemic. They're all shouting the Rocket. It sticks in your head.
Oh, you're right. Yeah,
very intelligent the way they do that.
And some cool name drops in there. Jack Flash, Rocket Man, Sgt. Pepper and the band, Ziggy, Benny and the Jets, Take a Rocket, and of course all that's popping up on the TV at the time. Yet again, man, the guitar riff was catchy, maybe not as musically impressive as Women was, but probably more of a catchy overall song.
I was going to ask you that since Women was the first single and this was the last, which one did you like better?
I think I actually preferred Rocket by a little bit.
I do too, but it's just interesting. They chose that as the 7th single and the other one was the first single. So,
but it's really cool to see these videos too and see them actually perform this. I dig that, man. And as we go now to the 2nd U.S. single, we're going to Animal. Went to 19. Evan David said this compellingly wild, dynamic rocker was also the first Hysteria single to be released in the UK, where it went to 7, and the first real glimpse of single success that the band had ever had in their native land, which for some odd reason had never taken to Def Leppard as strongly as had been the case.
It's the opposite of what we usually see.
Yeah, so where they're bigger in America than their own native place, with the result that this clip of the band performing the song on Top of the Pops was a palpable sense of long-awaited joyful triumph about it. So that's what we're gonna get to rocking right here.
Yeah, and it said this one is the longest tune. It took them to complete 2.5 years. They worked on this thing. This song's really, really good. Well, there you have it, Animal, the great Top of the Pops. Trey, one of the things I always enjoy is the electric guitars aren't plugged in. The backing vocalists don't have mics. It's just fantastic. Before we even talk about the song, which is absolutely fantastic, let's take a moment to admire Joe Elliott's hair.
That's right.
Feathered.
Yeah, long,
it looks healthy. The other guy's the long hair. But Joe, and then, the white jacket.
I was going to say,
your birthday's coming up.
Dude, yeah, y'all want to give me something. Give me that white jacket, man.
Navy one, same kind in the Women video, but just fantastic. And, Def Leppard always struck me as a band, unlike some of their other hair metal, if we're going to call them that, counterparts, which I hate to even call them hair metal. I know they sort of are, but I think they're advanced past what we just call hair metal, but they didn't take them. I never felt the arrogance in them.
You're right, man.
That I feel in a lot of the others. Like, it was never really seemed about them. When you watch these performance videos of a lot of the other groups, I'm not going to mention Motley Crue's name or anyone else, by name, but those guys, you felt like it's all about me. Look at me.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's a great point, because I was going to note just how great a frontman, how charismatic, and just that sense of fun that Joe is.
Yes.
You could definitely see that in that performance there with the crowd. I thought that was a highlight, and yet again, again. I knew this song as it was getting
So
going.
good, man.
Chorus, yet again, a highlight. Feel like we're building up to that. And I want, and I need it. And a bit of a less harder rocking edge than
Yes.
our first, couple tracks there. So just a very pleasant, easy on the ear song that just has that sense of fun, and great to see the lads up there performing live too.
Oh, I agree, Trey. Now I want you to just give you a little warning. Watch out, my man, because love bites.
Love Bites coming up next. Our fourth track, Evan Davis said, originally brought to the band in an acoustic Eagles-esque country version by Mutt Lange. This stirring power ballad is not only pretty darn powerful in its own right, but also stands as a potent example of the sheer near-universal crossover appeal which Hysteria had for its audience at the time, and indeed ever since. For, as Phil Collins put, quote, when Mutt said, we want to bring pop in, we were like, great, we loved Queen, the Beatles, Stones, bands that crossed over into the pop realm. Loved Michael Jackson and Prince. They weren't just R&B artists, they crossed over, and I think anyone who's massively successful doesn't stay in a box, end quote. The extent to which this approach brought results in chart terms can be gleaned by the fact that this tune reached 1 in the US and 11 in the UK. And again, according to Colin himself, on a more personal level, Love Bites was, quote, the only one of our songs to make my mom cry. I kind of knew then that it had something or another.
So now we're just back to Spotify, but boy, those live performances were something else.
No, man. So let's cue this one up.
Have it, Love Bites. Trey, when this song came out, I like this song, but it's not one of my favorites on the album. But what this song benefited from, as far as chart success and going to number one, is that Def Leppard by this time was the biggest band in America, and this album was everywhere. So then those next singles are going to be elevated. But I mean, it's a good song.
No, man, good to kind of switch it up, get a little power ballad action, unique with the electronic kind of voice and drumming at the start and end, bookending the track. Easy story that everybody can get behind in a sense.
Yeah, exactly, man. He loves her. She probably doesn't love him. He's thinking she's pretending, and that's kind of the gist of the whole thing. I think they did a good job of implementing the drumming and the guitar work inside the verses to add a little punch to them, not just your traditional, hair metal again band power ballad.
No, man, and yet again had that instrumental break kind of in the middle with that very slick and kind of polished guitar that you don't really hear that type of sound that much these days, all these years later, man. And
and now we're gonna go on, Trey, to one of the most iconic songs, not only of the 80s, but probably of the last 25 years of that century. Like, everybody knows this.
Oh, yeah. Pour Some Sugar on Me. Usually regarded as the definitive Def Leppard tune, both on Hysteria and in the context of the band's career. It is salutary to realize that the song itself was very much a last-minute creation, the impetus for which occurred when Mutt Lange, who had long been insisting that the album needed one more song with the potential to become a crossover hit, overheard Joe Elliott jamming a riff which he had come up with a couple weeks earlier during a production break. Realizing the latent power of which he heard, Lange persuaded Elliott to make a full demo of the track for the rest of the band, with both men coming up with the lyrics by going to opposite sides of the studio, singing improvised stream of consciousness lyrics into dictaphones, and then transcribing what they thought the other had said after swapping said dictaphones.
Wow, the whole process of completing the song took about 2 weeks, with Elliott claiming to be inspired by the Aerosmith Run DMC rap rock mega hit Walk This Way. And much like that tune, the sheer hypnotic appeal of this sultry, even downright sexy rock anthem is quite frankly undeniable. For not only did it reach number 2 in the US as a 4-single release, but it helped to boost the album sales to a truly staggering degree, with one record executive claiming that its success at one point led over 450,000 copies of the album, almost a gold record worth of sales, being shipped in one single day. The single was not as successful in the UK for some reason, only reaching 18. But we are going to react, and I remember this now. Some of the videos we're reacting to, Trey, are only UK ones.
Okay, interesting, yeah.
So this is a different one than those of us in the States knew. This concert, stadium rock video to this song. This is a different one, so let's check it out.
All right, Pour Some Sugar on Me. Just an iconic, fantastic tune, man. That riff got to be one of the most instantly recognizable just from the get-go. And, interesting, Dad, too, where, this has kind of been associated with sexiness, current times where...
It's a stripper song now.
Yeah, man. Whereas here, man, you see the powerful women taking down the structure.
A very clever video, actually.
Oh, yeah.
A very clever video. But I mentioned it during I don't know if this song would have been as big in America without the iconic video, which is just a performance video, but just with more flashes. But this is really good. I'm glad he shared that one with us. And I mean, I've just heard this song so many times, but when you hear it when you're sitting here and it's just, man, it just fires you up. I don't know how many times in basketball games we came out to this song. I mean, it was kind of the way it was done back in the day. But yeah, what a song.
Well, and I think, too, the good time to highlight how strong the pre-choruses are in all these tunes, too. You know, something like, take a bottle, shake it up, break the bubble, break it up. And then
it builds. Yeah,
go
exactly.
in. So, yet again, a strong build there. And you even had Rick Allen rocking the Metallica shirt.
And as I said during the video, you know, he must have lost a bet. But, you know, I'm not a big Metallica guy, but I know everybody else is.
But, you know, obviously iconic and, you know, their most famous song for a reason, man. And now we're going to go to Armageddon It, their 6th U.S. single. Interesting to note, man, very front-loaded record with these singles.
It is. And, you know, this one went to 3 in the U.S., 20 in the U.K. And this is another song that's not nearly as good as Animal, in my opinion, but it comes after. Everything that comes after Pour Some Sugar on Me has this, you know, it just gets risen to the top. Intended to what Phil Collin had called a T-Rex meets Eddie Cochran with backing vocal style feel to it. It is both a prime punning example of the band's aforementioned tongue-in-cheek sense of humor in lyrical terms, as well as being another equally prime example of the true laborious nature of the Hysteria recording sessions themselves, with the initial draft of this song being completely overhauled by the time it was finally completed years later, with Joe explaining that the robotic one-note riff that sounded cool in 84 sounded ridiculous in 86. We have the official in-concert video we're going to check out.
All right, Armageddon It, and this has been cool to see. We've seen, you know, the intimate kind of top of the pops. We've seen just the different proper videos, and now we get to see the concert setting in here, man.
Yeah, and a huge stage, as you mentioned, which takes up a lot of space, which costs you tickets. But the way you overcome that, Trey, is to have a 360 stage in the middle of the arena, and then you're not blocking off the seats on any side, and you can throw everybody everywhere. But I'm sure, man, in 1988, they put on a hell of a live show, man.
Oh, yeah, man. And I thought that, just the scope of the stage kind of, you know, was a bit striking, you know.
Yeah,
and everybody moving. I like to shout out to Steve in there before he went into his solo. That was, had a bunch of wah-wah in it. The chorus, a bit of that sweeter feel, a bit Love Bites-esque at points. Again, a very kind of a power, not power ballad-esque, but
it's kind of a hybrid.
I think that, you know, you kind of get that blend there where, you know, coming right off of Pour Some Sugar on Me, which is just adrenaline inducing.
Exactly.
Here. We switch it up a bit, which I think was smart in the set list. And yet again, we haven't talked about it much, but I think those backing vocals, Dad, yet again give that sense of that community aspect.
That it does. It punches everything up in just the right places, and the instrumentation on it's fantastic. I mean, they never get mentioned, but, you know, great instrumentation. Rick being able to hammer that drum kit, dude.
It's impressive to see live, man. It really is. Showcasing that, hey, man, he wasn't going to let anything hold him back. I respect that. And now we're going to the longest tune on the record here. We have Gods of War. Evan David said, hands down, my favorite track on this album, as evidenced by the fact that the sound on my beloved, battered, old, borrowed cassette copy by now goes in and out a bit during Gods of War due to my constantly rewinding and replaying the song over and over for far too many years. I think the main reason why it appeals to me so darn much is twofold and owes much to both the sheer guitar wizardry to be found in the sadly late Steve Clark's masterful contributions to the tune, as well as to the politically savvy inclusion of the anti-terrorist speeches by Cold War leaders Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, both seemingly aimed at the infamous Colonel
Gaddafi's. I'll help you with that.
Yeah, Gaddafi's Libyan regime in particular, during the equally ingenious end section, which is itself also a fine showcase for Clark's talents to boot. Granted, on first hearing this truly epic tune as a kid, I probably just thought that said speech is simply added to the thrilling nature of the song's spine-chilling, decidedly aggressive atmosphere, without looking too closely at the song's wider anti-war political connotations, which I then understood little or nothing about on a naive level. But on listening to the whole thing again as a so-called grown-up, and especially in the murky light of the ambiguities of the decidedly mixed results on the War on Terror, all I can say is the more things change, the more things stay the same. This is going to be interesting as we kind of get into a bit of a deeper subject matter for Death.
For sure.
creative track, I think
Yes.
you could say, with the fade in at the start, Dad, which lasted a while.
Minute 45 seconds.
And then at the end there, you had the name drops with the speech snippets from Reagan and Thatcher coming in with the kind of bombs dropping in the background, and again just putting you in that wartime type of feel and setting with those sound effects going in, and especially up to this point in the album, been pretty lighthearted, maybe some heartbreak here and there for love, but Def Leppard then kind of switching gears on this one.
Yeah, and I don't think it's wrong at all to intentionally try to have hit songs. I think that's fine, but I think this one always stood out to me as the song that you could have almost thrown this on Pyromania, which was a much harder album, but by far the most well-constructed song, just from the fact that you mentioned the fade in. Then you have a verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. So you have three of them. But then it's almost like a song within a song, because then they just repeat the three choruses on the chorus.
I thought that was well done.
Really well done. So it's a 6-minute, 37-second song. It doesn't feel like it.
No, and this might not be the one I'd replay the most, but I think from a just creative standpoint, I think it's the most impressive tune up to this point. And my favorite chorus was, "We're fighting for the gods of war, but what the hell we fighting for?" Almost all the backing vocals, harmonized it.
Yeah, you can
at
feel
one
the power
time.
of that.
I thought that was tight, man, and I ain't going to fight no more, no way. Kind of getting that fiery edge to to the song, so to speak, man. So Evan David, this very well might end up amongst my favorites once we get to the end here, but we aren't done yet, ladies and gentlemen. We are now going to Don't Shoot Shotgun.
Evan David says yet another fist-pumping, powerful rock anthem in an album that's already chock full of them. This compelling track sadly gets overlooked far too often compared to some of the more famous tracks on the album, which is a crying shame because I, for one, have always thought it's a lot of fun. Trey, this used to be one of my least favorite songs of sound, so let's see if 30 years later I like it more. I didn't dislike it, but let's see. So, Trey, you may ask yourself, how do you take a 62-minute, 12-track album and pare it down a little bit? I got one answer for you. You cut Don't Shoot Shotgun. I didn't know what Don't Shoot Shotgun meant 30 plus years ago. I still don't know what it means. The song instrumentally is fantastic. Everybody's firing on all. It's fine, man. It's a standard fare for a lot of songs like this at that time.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's not a horrible song, but it's just, it is what it is.
No, yeah, just compared to the quality we've had up to this record, I do think as well it is
when
a
you
bit
set
of
a bar that high, you got to be careful what else you put on there.
It is a bit of a step down, I think here, obviously, as you look at the lyrics, he's falling for this gal and worried that, oh man, she's gonna be kind of biting him in the sense of maybe shooting him down his advances. Who knows here? I think the big positive for me on this track was that that guitar work where it almost was like not a machine gun going off, but the way the riff was,
it was
coming
fantastic.
in.
The instrumentation was fantastic.
The lyricism, just a little weak sauce.
Well, I mean, I mentioned on God's Award, 6:37 seemed not very long. This one was only 4.5 minutes, and it seemed long to me.
No, man, and now we're going to go to Run Riot right here. Evan David notes on this one, as was mentioned above, before getting involved with Def Leppard, producer Mutt Lange was perhaps most famous for his work with AC/DC, including Back in Black, and it is this fast-paced, almost punky rocker which displays that AC/DC influence more than any other on Hysteria, perhaps appropriately so, for while in practice, Def Leppard themselves were never comfortable with the way that they were often lumped together with either their contemporaries from the new wave of British heavy metal, such as Iron Maiden, or indeed with later glam metal bands such as Motley Crue and Poison, upon whom Pyromania in particular had been a key influence, and instead regarded themselves as a more pop-influenced, harmony-driven band. The fact remains that they could still rock with a capital R, as it were, and this tune in particular is a classic example.
Run Riot. Now, see, Trey, this is the song I always thought was the underrated song.
Dude, I was about to say.
Album. This song
This was fire, man.
This song is fire. Imagine if we just would have thrown out Don't Shoot Shotgun and went from Gods of War into this. But it does have some of the chorus and the anthemic, but it shows a different side of them, that they were able to do something, that they hadn't done so far on the album.
No, much, faster paced here. A lot of lyrics kind of pumped into under 5 minutes. And yet again, man, Steve Clark just absolutely shreds. Probably my favorite solo up to this point.
And I think he's
honestly
not remembered as much because he passed away, in 91. And I think so. was among the guys who were just fantastic in these bands in the 80s. I think he just isn't brought up.
But yeah, he just destroyed it on this track here, and yet again the height of the backing vocals were found in that chorus, man, with Joe keeping it steady with the Run Riot and backing him, man. I just thought it was so catchy, and I just love the energy about this song too, man. I think this is a one that could have been a single as well.
I do too. Yeah, I definitely. I think it's a lot better than some of the singles that they released.
So man, a cracking tune right there. And now we're gonna go to the title track, which I'm also a little bit familiar with. Evan David notes a strong return to the power ballad territory, already marked by several other tunes on this album. This album title track would be the third U.S. single, going to 10, went to 26 in the U.K. Once again, it stands both as a prime exemplar of Lang's painstakingly perfectionist production process. Try saying that 5 times.
You did
fast.
awesome with it. You banged it out in one.
With Lang apparently recording the tune's guitar chords one note at a time, as opposed to strumming them, in effect building a new chord in the process. And as an even more prime example of the sheer widespread nature of this album's crossover appeal, with none other than a young Taylor Swift duetting with Def Leppard on a performance of Hysteria and other classic Def Leppard tracks on an episode of country music television series Crossroads back in 2008, with Taylor quoting, "My mom was a huge fan of theirs when she was pregnant with me. Growing up, the music that was playing in my house was Def Leppard. It was music that she liked that I could like too. I've been screaming the words to Def Leppard songs for years." And Dad, we're going to cue up the official vid.
Yeah, and this is, Trey, the perfect example of the pour some sugar on me effect, right? Because Love Bites went to number 1 and this song went to number 10. I guarantee you this song would have went to number 1 if it was released after.
No, you're right, man. All right, the title track, Dad. What are your thoughts on this track? I prefer Love Bites as far as my Def Leppard ballads on
really
this.
See, this is one I'm probably skewed. I absolutely love this song.
I still enjoy it, but
I absolutely love this. I thought the video was well done, and the fact that it was interesting. The people dancing around them were dressed in different ways.
Yeah.
Some of them fancy. Have one guy in cowboy boots and the western.
Yeah.
Just that it's kind of like it appeals to everyone. But I was curious to what you thought, because like I said, this is one of them that I'm going to have too much of a nostalgic connection to.
No, man, it's still a good tune. I did enjoy the video, a lot of different the fade-ins too. I thought were done well, and the band getting dressed up in the ballroom.
That's right, man.
Was kind of cool. Didn't have that. I don't know, and maybe that was just my expectation. Didn't really have that instrumental section that quite gripped me per se. And
they played it more by the numbers on the ballad side.
But still a touching tune for what it is, man. And it's interesting too, especially when you see the cover of the record, that the title track is the most chilled out song on.
But it's the best. It's the best as far as like the best title.
Oh yeah,
I think that's why they just chose it. Yeah, it's like, okay, Hysteria. Oh wow, this is gonna be crazy.
No, man. So a cool tune right there. As we go now to our final tracks, Dad. Get excited, right?
Right. Are you excitable is what you're about to be asked. Evan David says, another really groovy, fast-paced rocker. This tune stands as one of the most prominent showcases, not only of the seemingly miraculous possibilities of Rick Allen's new electronic drum kit, as well as of the band's consistently excellent harmony skills, but also the extent to which a certain Mr. Jackson's influence can be detected on this album as something other than a sales target, with the heavy breathing section at the start of the track reminding me quite a bit not only of the title track of Thriller itself, but especially the opening heartbeat section of Smooth Criminal, which was also released in August of '87. Perhaps a case of great musical minds think alike, so to speak. So here's what I'm going to tell you, Trey, from my memory. There were 3 songs I would have left off Hysteria. I already mentioned Don't Shoot Shotgun and these last 2, so we'll see if that's changed for me.
See if they hold up 30 years.
See if I still have that opinion.
All right, Excitable. Yeah, man, this by far the worst track for me, man.
Say,
by far the worst track.
I'm 100% on that one. It's okay. Once again, I still enjoy the instrumentation, still top notch. But otherwise,
McKellen's drumming is the highlight.
Yeah, that's the highlight. But I mean, this song is it's a throwaway, man. We could have got down to 10 songs straight. And if I'm right on the next one, Imagine if this thing was 9 songs, how strong. Maybe the next one's going to grow me. But I don't really have much else to say about it.
I just think the chorus was very weak. It didn't have that catchy
It seemed like
hook.
they wrote it in 10 minutes and just said, you know
You're
what,
right.
let's do this.
And
But
you know the intro didn't really work for me.
No.
Are you excited
no,
about
I hated it in 1988. I hate it now.
But hey, man, let's see if we're gonna end on a strong note here with Love and Affection, the closer.
Yeah, Evan David says, a final venture into the realm of the power ballad. This final track may not, in fact, stand out anywhere near as much as some of the other songs in this album, but the sheer strength of its harmonies, coupled with Joe's, as ever, highly effective lead vocals, not to mention Steve and Phil's equally enjoyable teamwork on guitar, as well as Rick's newly enhanced drumming, still makes this a very good Def Leppard tune. And the fact that it may nevertheless be one of the weaker numbers on the album just goes to show you how freakishly strong Hysteria is as a whole, rather than the tune itself being anything other than a fun, if perhaps somewhat melancholy, passionate, and ultimately solid album closer. Let's check it out.
Baiting us out here, Love and Affection. What you got on this, Dan?
I'd leave it on here.
Yeah, man.
It's fine. Yeah, it's fine. I'd leave it on.
I dug it, man. I think that it worked as a closer.
I thought that was a good point you made during it.
You know, sonically, it kind of had, like Evan David said, a bit of that sadness and melancholy kind of brimming underneath.
Yeah, it kind of closed you out of the adrenalized. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. And I think that this kind of got back to that strong chorus that we were used to kind of in this entire record, man. Don't have much more to add.
Yeah, I thought Joe sounded great.
Oh yeah, he did. One of the better vocal performances probably on this entire record, man. So that closes us out, and now it takes us to our favorite tracks. Before we do that, Evan David's favorite tracks in reverse order are going to be Run Riot, Pour Some Sugar on Me, and Gods of War. And man, he's going to have some of mine, because I would also, you can't not have Pour Some Sugar on Me.
Agreed. Even though I might have heard that song as much as I've ever heard any song. Like, I would never listen to that song on my own alone now, but you can't deny its greatness just because it was overplayed.
No, you're right. I for an underrated one that didn't get a lot of play, Run Riot really did impress me. I gotta go with Love Bites, going with the ballad action. I don't know, something about that tune. It just is a bit engaging, and I think I'm gonna go a little Gods of War as well, just for a different side of the band and what they kind of the creative the creativity of that song impressed me.
Yeah, I'm gonna be. There's a lot of these I could pick. I'm gonna go Pour Some Sugar on Me, like we already mentioned. You had to. I'm gonna go Animal. I'm gonna go Gods of War, Run Riot, and Trey. I gotta go the title track, Hysteria.
Got to, man, got to. And that'll take us now to the overall score of the record here. I'll start it off.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you started off.
Man, going into this, man, I know the whole hair metal, and we can split hairs on if Def Leppard are that or not. They've kind of been lumped in over the decades,
right.
in that it gets derided, man, and I think that's a bit pretentious by some people, man, because
this
is fun. This is fun music right here, like, this isn't the type of music that I usually listen to in my free time. But whenever you kind of strike the mood and it hits you, man, it feels so 80s, kind of in the best way to me. It's almost like a time capsule going back, even though I didn't obviously live through the decade. I think the drumming by Rick Allen, the electronic nature of that drum kit stands out. Obviously, the dual guitar by Phil and Steve, and Steve especially, man, is a highlight on this record. And then you got Joe oozing that charisma, has a strong voice to boot as well. So you bring all that together, man, you got a really good album. I'm going to be at a 7.75 for me. I think you shave off Don't Shoot Shotgun and Excitable, put this at maybe 10 tracks, around 51, 52 minutes here. That's a bit nitpicky, I know, but that's where I'm at here, and I enjoyed it. I need to go, and I don't think I've still listened to Pyromania in full, so that's got to be next.
Much harder, not harder as in bad, but like a harder listen. Yeah, for me, this is interesting to go down memory lane. I've listened to a ton of music since then, and to try to go in this, and I always try to be objective. You heard me slam a couple of these songs. I think if you enjoy this genre of music, I think this is the best album ever made in this genre of music. I don't think there's ever one better before it or after it. Just my opinion. The quality of songs, the amount of quality songs is outstanding. So for me, I'm going to be, and I always try to, I do, man. I try to be objective.
No, man, give it your score. Give it your score.
So I'm going to give it, I'm an 8.75 to a 9 because I just think when you go through, it kind of stinks in a way because a couple of the worst songs are towards the end, so you forget how absolutely strong.
Especially the first 5 or 6, man, it was just hit after hit.
Yeah, so I'll settle in at an 8.75. I mean, for me personally, it's probably higher than that, but as an objective score for me, that's where it's at. I really appreciate you bringing this up, David. He asked me for months, "Are you ever going to do that one?" After I did Pyromania, I'm like, "Yeah, but there's just not time on this channel. If it's not for a patron, there just isn't time to do it." But really, really appreciate that, and your great write-ups as always.
Yeah, always impressive, man. Love reading the passion coming forward. So be sure to give Evan David some love in the comments below, and let us know your favorite tracks and overall thoughts on Hysteria in the comments. As always, Dad, appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you'd like to be a patron just like Evan David is and help us out and help keep the channel running, check out the link below or click the link in the end screen that is going to hit in a few seconds.
And until next time, y'all, thanks for watching. Happy listening, and we will see you.